Welcome to the most serious podcast, and I have Arjun or AJ with me. He is, by the dressing sense only you can judge, he's one of the coolest people who've been on the show till now.
Oh man, what an intro already.
No, you definitely are living up to the artist part, which I'm sure we'll talk about at length during this conversation. But welcome to the most serious podcast. I'm super excited to sit and talk to you.
Thanks, man. Really good to be here. And like I said, found you through Guru Pashupati's podcast. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed your style of questioning and stuff. And I thought this would be something that would really benefit, hopefully, your listeners, but I know will benefit mine as well. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I think most of the consumer like demographic or even the listener demographic for this podcast is young adults, and people from 18 to 24. That
Perfect.
is the huge bracket, and I think someone like you is something that most of them or most of people my age also look or forward to, or are trying to become or get to that stage of living on their own terms, living in terms of a creative and things like that, because that always looks very flashy from the outside, but most of
Exactly.
them are stuck into a kind of rat race or whatever stock norm you call it, and you have done both sides. Okay, so
Yes.
that's why I want to ask this question to you, that what is this perspective shift that happened for you, which led you to kind of go from the stock things that people do to turning your own creative.
I guess, see, it's a great question because I guess, see, growing up, my parents who have been brought up in India, have quite an orthodox background. They've both worked in service all their life. Although my mom, who had opportunities when she was young to get into graphic design and stuff and
Yeah.
freelancing, gave it up to raise kids and build a family. So that gives a little bit of context on the kind of background I've had growing up. They've always said, get a job, do well in your studies, do well academically, and all that sort of stuff. Buy a house, save up, get married. So it was kind of that conventional pathway, and everyone around me was in that pathway as well. you know and so my perspective was always around the sense of, by this age I should achieve this, by this
Yeah.
point I should reach this milestone, and
Mhm.
it's just a never ending race, because at the end of the day, when you get to the next place, you're still unhappy in some way, you're not fulfilled entirely. Yes, your surroundings have changed, you may have earned more money and all that, but at the end of the day, there's still something missing that you look elsewhere for. So that never ended for me. It was always like, okay, now I've got to this position in my company. I did IT for 13 years, to give your listeners some background. So I started as a programmer, and then I had grown quite high. I'd grown to become product management, senior leadership, agile coaching, all that sort of stuff at an enterprise level. But it was still not satisfying me. The money was there, everything was there. But I was still like, something's missing. Now, on the side, along the side of this, I was doing music. I was doing covers on YouTube and stuff. And
Mhm.
I did not know at the time how I could make that a living, because that is the trap. It's very hard to, it's like the podcast business you're doing. It starts with something, and then it
Yeah.
grows to a point where you can make it a business.
Yeah.
But you don't understand that until you've done it at least once.
For
you know?
sure.
So that was kind of the journey. And the perspective was very normal and what you hear from society a lot. I hadn't challenged the perspective of the masses
Hmm.
until I started that journey. And I guess through that musical journey, what has changed is everything has changed. My perspective has widened
Yeah.
beyond the one perspective of the masses. Because if you think about it, the whole pressure and everything that you consume, media that you consume, people's words that you consume, most of them have gone through this conventional path. And so most of the perspective you're exposed to generally in life is that standard perspective,
Yeah. That's so true. And I think I was hearing a discourse from Osho or someone, I don't remember exactly, but he also talks about this whole same idea of that inner talk that you have, that is
Mm,
not as much yours as you feel, because that is a amalgamation of all the teachers you've had and all the friends that you've had, all of what society has told you, all of what your family has told you. So that
correct.
inner voice distinction between what is your true sense and what is your true identity versus what is that society's monitor that has been fed inside you as your inner voice to constantly challenge and trick with your brain into taking
Correct.
riskier decisions or decisions that you feel are more like you. I think
Correct.
that is where most people struggle with.
Correct. And what actually happened is when I started music as well, that was my perspective. I was operating from a perspective of, oh, I need this many streams. Oh, I need to be on this radio station. Oh, my name needs to be associated with that person. So
Yeah.
that perspective was the same perspective that I began the music journey with, you know. But over time it evolved to, okay, what makes me happy in life? How can how can my thing benefit the world, the art that I'm doing? So that is a big change. It takes a long time to change that perspective. But what actually got me started on that journey was not only the music was one form of getting there in the mind, but the meditation and the spiritual aspect of it. And those realizations that actually there is more perspective out there than just your own or just the perspective of the masses.
Yeah.
Once I started realizing certain things, that holy shit, maybe what 10 people have told me in the past is rubbish. Maybe there is more to
Could be.
this one thing
Yeah.
than that. When I started challenging those kinds of things at a very ground level, at a foundational level, and started challenging every perspective I've ever had, including my own, that is through meditation and stuff. That is when I started realizing there is more out there in this world. And that is when the whole mindset started shifting from that of a standard or whatever you want to call it
Yeah.
to that of an artist. And that's what I believe. Artists and entrepreneurs and all these 1% that everyone aspires to be. It's all in here and in here. It's not out there.
But how does one create the reality in this regard? Okay, so someone always gets very excited when they hear about this magical stuff,
Yeah.
and thinking beyond what's normal and all of that. But after that, 5 minutes later, when they are done watching that YouTube video, they don't make a practical shift in their life.
Mm.
And what difference does an artist have in that regard in terms of execution and not just feeling that creativity but channeling it through some sort of craft that you do, that maybe it's music for you, for someone it's painting. But
Yeah.
why do you think people just let go of that creativity and not express it?
You asked a lot of questions in one. So
you can pick your favorite.
see, I think it's like when you're learning something new, when you're growing up, when you're young. At first, it's not just about watching someone play. If you want to learn cricket or you want to learn music or something, you
Yeah.
can't just watch someone do it and say, oh, I'm gaining something from it. Yes, you're gaining some knowledge of some sorts, but there is no practical context or frame to that knowledge at all, because that person has had their own journey and their own learnings to get to that point. So
Yeah.
just by watching a YouTube video about, oh, this is the great mindset and this is the magic beyond, is not it starts there. But then one has to be curious enough to actually go and execute things. And that is where the whole artist, entrepreneur, 1%, for me, that's where that distinction lies. A lot of people will think, plan, read 10,000 books, but have they taken one step actually
Yeah.
to get to the direction that they want to achieve? Let's say you want to be a millionaire, okay? Like, I know that's not a great goal of money itself, but let's just say most people want $1 million in their bank.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to have. But the question is, by reading 10 people's journey to $1 million is not going to make you a millionaire.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to take the step for your journey that's relevant to you at this point, whatever that step is. Even if for you, for example, your first video and your first podcast you recorded, that was a step you took, and now you're here.
Well, it's very lonely at the top.
Well, we're both sitting alone in a room, so
yeah, I think that speaks volumes.
yeah.
But AJ, so I've always wondered, and I always wanted to ask this to a musician in general, like, if we come to your craft only, where does a song actually start? So whenever I hear a finished track on Spotify, does it start at lyrics? Does it start at the first beat that is made, or all of them are very separate? So, like, I just want to understand this whole journey of how a song is made.
And that's the beauty of music and art. There is no starting point and there is no end point defined, right? So some of my songs have started with lyrics. Some of them have started with a beat. Some of them have started with compositions or melodies. Most of the time now, I've fallen into a pattern which works for me,
Yeah.
which is I like to be at the desk with my guitar by my side. It's over there. And I like to just play around. When I find something, I am a producer by heart. So I actually go and produce a little bit on it, you know?
Okay.
Whereas for a singer-songwriter, a pure guitarist or a singer, the process will be different. And it works either way. But what I've found is it's actually easier to fit lyrics to a melody than it is to fit melody to lyrics. That's what I've found in my personal journey. So if anyone's watching and has done it the other way, I would love to hear, you know, in the comments, like what's going on.
Yeah, I think
But
it's always this craft of music needs so so much presence and such alignment in general, because I think once when I was learning a guitar, and this was probably a couple of years back, so my guitar teacher told me one thing, which when I was struggling to match the chords and the strumming, so he was just telling me that always the first step is to make sure that your rhythm is correct, even though you're missing chords. So most of the people won't be able to identify if you're playing wrong, even if your strumming is right and your rhythm is not, you're not missing the beat. But then also I think that this music craft requires such alignment of your mind and body at the same time, because you can't be distracted and you can't be playing correctly. Do you agree with that?
100%. Like, for example, I'll tell you what's happened and what I've learned as well through this. I used to do like 7-8 songs a day. I used to sit and just, at one point in my life, do 14 hours of music a day, but I used to keep jumping from song to song to song to song. Now, it's easy to do that and execute that, but if you actually then sit back and listen to those songs, right, you will realize that, oh, the vibe is missing in this one, or the emotion has not come in this, or there's a gap in this one, or you'll see those holes flow through. So that's what happens. It's you have to actually put everything into your creation, everything, and it has to be aligned in the sense, if your mind is thinking about your ex, for example, but you want to write about whatever, love right now, somehow there is going to be an association that comes through in your creation, whether it is consciously done or not. Somehow that what is currently in your body and what you're feeling is going to play through in that vibe, because at the end of the day, a listener only hears the overall vibe. Yeah. But everything impacts vibe. Even the way you said a word impacts vibe. Even the exact word you've used impacts vibe. Even the emotion that you are in at the present state while making the art impacts vibe. So
you've touched up a very interesting topic. I think I want to ask another follow-up on this. That if your mind is thinking about your ex and you are thinking of writing a song about love, why is there such a strong connection between heartbreak and good music? For creatives as well, because I think there have been a lot of songs about broken hearts. Of course, I think that's the perpetual topic of human history. But why do you think that emotion of maybe a breakup or something like that triggers something in some artists and they go on and write such crazy good stuff?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it's a very good question. Like, I have goosebumps that you've asked that question, actually. Actually, what I think in my journey that has been that the heartbreak is more intense than the love. You remember the most intense memories of your life at the end of the day. If you've come an inch from death, you're going to remember that memory the most in your life. Absolutely. Right? But now what's happened is most people's biggest heartbreaks that they will always remember come from that teenage years, school years, college years, because that is where you love the most intensely. Whether you like it or not, that is where you love the most intensely, because that was the first time you felt it. It was the first time something happened, or it was. And then what happened is that breakup and the bad memories, if you actually look back at your life, the great memories are always there, but the bad memories just hit differently. They just have that intensity and create that vibration in your body that you can't get from anything else. So I personally think it is just the intensity of the emotion is so much harder. Love it can be intense, it can be chill, it can be soft, but heartbreak is always intense. That's so
Yeah, that's a powerful response. And I think this also, again, I was hearing some place that you can actually immediately go from laughing to stopping laughing. Yeah, you stopped laughing. But you can't ever go from crying to just immediately stop crying. Because the amount of, like, that negative hold of that feeling is always greater than whatever positive state that you're in. That is why you have
Exactly.
to be very careful with all the negativity that comes to your life, and how you build that wall for yourself, and maybe which is self-care, maybe which is realization of your own identity, but making sure that
Exactly.
you have that place.
Exactly. And another thing I wanted to say, because this has happened in my journey, as you get older, you start appreciating the good moments more. You become more grateful for life in general, just for being here, grateful for the people in your life. And I think as I've gotten older, the happy memories have stuck more. But when I'm
Mm.
younger, it almost feels like a lot of great memories have just gone by because I've not really realized it's such a great thing, you know?
Yeah, I think that gratitude always kicks in once you start outgrowing that stage. But I have a question for you, which is,
Yeah.
on the lines of your personal ambition
Mm.
now in life, because you've done, like a very different career switch from being in IT and doing, getting to like high management positions in that, and now to music and almost starting like from a new place. What is your ambition? What actually do you look forward to in life? And now, if your alignment from just material goals has changed to maybe something more spiritual or something more deeper, what is that? What does that look like?
So at a base level, the first thing they always say in a plane, for example, when it's about to crash is put your own oxygen mask first before you put others on first.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm at a journey, at a stage in the journey where the only oxygen mask left for me to put on is the financial one, you know? And so right now, my immediate thing is to get my finances to a state where I can actually start helping others.
Yeah.
But my big vision is to bring Indian pop music to the globe, just like
Hmm.
how K-pop is listened to globally. I'm in New Zealand right now. K-pop is listened to here on the radio. Spanish music is listened to here. But actually, the Indian population in New Zealand is stronger than any other, population. Maybe other
Hmm.
than Chinese, but that's what I mean. Indian pop should be the thing that's on the radio for me because
Yeah.
Indian music is very powerful. So that is like my vision, and that's what I'm trying to do through my art, but also through helping others through the businesses that I'm trying to set up.
Hmm.
So it is at the end, it has to be a business. I can't just freely hand out. I wish I
Of
could, but
course.
it's not sustainable. I tried it when I came to India actually, but it's not sustainable. So my goal is to actually get Indian pop music to the globe. But how I plan to do that for myself, forget about now the vision, for myself is I look at life as what kind of lifestyle does my day to day look like?
Okay.
And if I can move my lifestyle today into that direction, then eventually I'll get to the point where my ideal lifestyle aligns with my current lifestyle. So that's how I kind of plan to get there.
So how does your day to day, like, in general, look like? I'm very interested to know how an artist, how does an artist have their regular life sorted?
So right now, it depends on the situation. So if you're touring, for example, on a 3-month tour, your day to day is going to look very different. If you're writing an album or finishing up an album, your whole week might be spent in the studio, 10 hours a day to get it over the
Hmm.
line. But right now, the situation I'm in is my wife and I have just moved into a new house, and
Hmm.
I've got my own studio space and stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
desperately trying to make money to make sure we don't lose this. So, so I wake up at 7 in the morning. I have clients from India, clients from New Zealand that I talk to that come to do, come to the studio, do music production, mixing and mastering remotely for people in India. So I do about
Wow.
4 to 5 clients a day. Then I have a part-time job where I'm helping a school actually implement this program, this musical program in Samoa, in a different country. So that's I spend about 1 or 2 hours there in a day, and then my own music, and then my wife and housework.
Hmm.
So it's pretty full on, but we try and get to bed by about 10:30, 11 nowadays.
That's the full hustle, man. I think actually you're making it work through your craft, and kudos to you, because sometimes I feel it plays to your mind as well, right? I mean, you can't deny the fact that it's not easy, or it's just it looks as cool as as everyone can do it, and it takes a toll on your mental health.
Exactly. And the thing is, when I was younger, when I was getting into this, the thing that drew me to this career was the fame. I'll be honest, right? And it's the thing that draws most people to the career. But to make it sustainable for each individual, you have to actually figure out what you really love about the career. Whether it is the art itself. I mean, I would say it's a prerequisite to love the art itself,
Yeah.
but there are other things in that career that you might love, like the helping people part, writing with people part. But the fame is not something. Actually, just being on screen, answering interviews, all that stuff is the cool stuff, right? But that's only a small part of it. It's not going to be like, you're not going to do that all day, and it's going to drain you if you do that all day. So you really have to enjoy the other aspects of the career as well, including the hustle, the struggle for rent initially. All these things are part and parcel of that journey.
No, I think I truly understand. And also, my always hunch with this is that however cool a person's life might look from the outside, there are so many things that you're just not aware of about their whole journey and story. And this is very interesting. So I remember this from Guru Pashupati's conversation only. So we were talking about this thing about criticism, and he was like, there are many people who come and comment under my videos that you're this, you're that. So he was like, criticizing someone, and this comes from a place of judgment, of course, is that
Yes.
you, for that moment, you feel that you are better than them. So he gave me a very funny example, which was that they comment under my video that you don't know anything, and then when they try and book an auto, and the auto wala rejects them, and he's like, then they are hit with the realization that no, actually in real life you're not better off than anyone else. And that made me laugh so much, and also that hit home. Like, people just look at things from outside and not from a curious perspective, but from a judgmental perspective, to just start comparing. Does
exactly.
Do you relate with that?
A lot of it. And I'll tell you one thing that's funny about this, because this has happened to me. I've been on the receivers and the giving end of this, right? So when you're young, for example, I don't know if this happened to you as well. It'll be interesting. When I was young, I used to see my friends succeed around me and stuff. And I would love it. I mean, at the end of the day, you love your friends and stuff. You want them to succeed. But when I was younger, there was also a little part in me that would get envious a little bit. Why am I not
of
in
course.
that position? But that is where this whole thing, I believe, comes from. It is that you don't actually feel that you are worth something. You don't actually live up to you don't believe you actually are where you're at. So everything is actually, your whole perception of life and your view of everybody comes from that insecure place. So it's actually like it's that judgment that you put on yourself. So if you're insecure about, I used to be a fat kid, for example. I was insecure about my weight. So I always judged my body. I always said, oh, my body's not good enough. So I'm trying, in doing that, in placing that bar for myself, I have actually subconsciously placed that bar on everybody. That means anyone who's fat, I'm going to be like, oh, look at you. Even now, sometimes it comes. Sometimes that old mentality will still creep through. I'll look at somebody who's not fit and who's talking to me about fitness. And internally, I'm still that old me, it's coming out like, oh, why are you not doing this? Why? Like, it's still judging.
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to describe, because no one's asked me this question before. But, that self-judgment is kind of like, you just project that onto everybody else.
I think an analogy that comes to my mind, to even make it further relatable for people, is that if you are trying to clean a window, which you feel is stained, and you're putting full on efforts to it, and it's not cleaning, then you might to check if your spectacles are stained or not. You might
exactly. That's the one.
So the perspective, and which is very beautifully, explained by you, that that perspective, unless and until you don't look from that lens of, why do I not feel self-worthy enough, or just why don't I respect myself to that extent that even I am deserving of these things. I think that's where judgment comes from. It always comes from a place of insecurity. And I'm
Correct,
sure
because
whenever you're an
yourself
artist, you have to deal with that more.
all the time, because what happens in the artist journey is that there is less of you and more of them, right? So at the end of the day, you're getting a lot of opinions from society and family and loved ones and everybody, that
Yeah.
if your self-image and your self-worth is not actually built up to that place, every opinion is going to affect you. Every opinion is going to make you feel threatened. Every opinion is going to make you want to retaliate somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
So as an artist, and that's a very good question, because that big journey, one of the first questions you asked me, that shift in perspective.
Yeah.
A big shift is I've had to learn to grow my own image of myself as, actually, you have worked hard for this. You deserve this spot.
Yeah.
You deserve this opportunity. You deserve this. You've actually worked for it. You have the skills, and you see that with other artists. If you're working with artists, some artists you ask, can you share your music? Just whatever. And they'll give you a 10-sentence paragraph about why they can't share the music. But the reality is they're ashamed of sharing the music most of the time.
Oh, yeah. That makes so much sense. Yeah.
See, even if you ask like a poet or something, even maybe a friend or two you have that write raps, but they'll never show you that rap. And I'm like, why aren't you showing people? Because you're embarrassed. You don't think it's good enough. But actually, you only know something's good enough once you put it out there and you get the feedback.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And I had to, early in the artist journey, I put out a lot of rubbish. Even now, I put out a lot of rubbish, and I get that feedback. And when your self-image is high, you're okay with the rejection. You're okay with the no. You're okay with the not everybody likes this song, whatever. You move on. But when you're insecure, everything hits you like a knife.
That's actually so true. I think, for me also, it's very relatable to that extent. Whenever you come from a place of, lack of self-worth, then you are always underconfident in every engagement that you go through in that phase. Correct. But this makes me, wonder that when you were transitioning from product and tech to something like music, so was there ever, times when you thought that, maybe did I make the wrong choice, or should I have stuck to the safer path? And, or is that now completely gone? Because again, that is also not an easy decision to make. And people would love to trade places with you at that, tech position, high management, upper management type. So what was that thought process like?
I knew after
like, were there any regrets?
Never regrets. But one thing I would have for sure, let's answer your question first.
Yeah.
I think it was a transition through the journey. So initially, I didn't know, it was a question of how is this going to happen? Mm-hmm. It was always a how. How will I make this career happen? At some point, it shifted to when. It was a matter of, because I knew my skill set has got to a certain level. People are telling me that same thing, that, oh, your skills are actually, your music is incredible now. Like, I can hear this on the radio. I'm getting that feedback, Then my fan base started growing slowly. So all these things helped me realize my self-worth at the end of the day. It helped me realize I've actually worked for this. I deserve to be here. And then as a result of that, I stopped questioning myself. It again comes back to the self-worth, Yeah. Once you're sure of yourself, once you understand that you also have flaws. No one's saying that I'm the best musician. I have flaws. I can't play something as well as somebody else and whatnot. I can't sing as good as somebody else. There'll always be someone else better. But you are still good enough. And if you believe you're good enough, then you believe you can achieve anything. You can get to that point by working towards it every day, spending time on it every day. So once you have that idea that actually, if you want to become the best artist in the world, you have to start and take steps towards that. And may you get there, hopefully, but you'll get somewhere. You'll get in that vicinity by the end of your life if you keep trying. Because of that, I'm very sure that if I take the right steps every day, every second of my life,
Yeah.
then the next second will be fine. So now I have full faith
That's very
that
solid.
whichever
Yeah.
step I take, I trust myself to such a degree that it'll be the right step.
It's actually a very solid philosophy to live by. I think it takes away a lot of your personal, questioning of yourself and your decisions at all times.
Correct.
But I'm very interested to know that how different is life in New Zealand versus India. Like, so I think I actually had a chat. I don't remember the time, but there was this person, Mr. Bill Lee Emery. He was also from New Zealand, and he's been on the podcast. He was, I think, at that time 71 or 72, and he was definitely the oldest person on the show, and very wise
Wow.
and very so many stories to tell. I love talking to him, and he was the last person I talked to from New Zealand, and that was probably a couple of years back. So I would want to know your perspective. How is life there? How different it is from India? What do you like about there? What are some things that you don't?
See, I'll give you the whole story and I'll try
Yeah,
and wrap it up quick in five
yeah.
minutes. So I moved here when I was young, very young, 9 years old, and it was late 90s and stuff at that time. And New Zealand was very different then. No one knew
Okay.
about New Zealand back then. It was one of those, oh wow, where are you kind of
Hmm.
thing. Even now, it's still relatively young country and small
Yeah.
country, but back then no one knew about it. So when we came here, the Indian population here was also very low,
Okay.
and because of that, I was one of the first Indians in my school.
Oh.
Second Indian, but the first Indian was born here,
Okay.
so he was no good for me. So when I first came, it was very difficult because people didn't understand. Oh, they used to ask me, why is your skin color different? You know,
Hmm.
and that's not their fault. It's just that it was such an inexposed place. They
Yeah.
used to smell my lunch and be like, oh,
Hmm.
what is this smell? But then they used to taste it and like it. You
Hmm.
know, now Indian culture has integrated, but back then it was very different. So
Hmm.
growing up, it was actually very hard to grow up here because especially Auckland, which is the city I'm in, I feel that everybody has had their groups of people that they've grown up with because it's a small country.
Yeah.
And to put it in comparison, Linking Road in Mumbai has more population than our entire country, right? So, so that's to put it into perspective. So everybody is kind of grown up with their own groups of people and stuff. So it was very difficult to suddenly come in here from an altogether different world, different
Yeah.
reality, and forget about fitting in. And that was the other thing. Over here, at least growing up, everything was about fitting in. It
Hmm.
wasn't about
Just
standing
trying to
out
be accepted by that. Hmm.
by society, by this and
Yeah.
by that. It wasn't about standing out and being someone unique.
Hmm.
At least the when I was growing up, that wasn't the thing. Now it's becoming the thing because everyone sees content creators and this and that,
Yeah.
influencers. So everyone's now it's a cool thing to stand out. But that was my experience growing up. It was a very hard one. But then through school and stuff, I found some really great friends, both from New Zealand and Indian and all over the world, different cultural people. And that group of people was really a big win for me
Hmm.
because they're still my closest friends. They're all over the world now, but anytime there's a phone call, once
Yeah.
every year we'll talk, but it'll be the same.
Yeah.
So that was a big positive about growing up here. Opportunities in New Zealand were great growing up. India, I still hear horror stories about people getting paid 45, 50K a month to do a graduate role and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
So that's very true. That's not far away from the truth.
yeah, so there's a lot of positives and opportunities. I would have never
Yeah.
played cricket. I would have probably never gotten into music had I not come to New Zealand and had the free
Mm.
time to actually explore it and meet the
Mm.
people that I met here. I would have probably been an accountant or engineer or something in India. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
all up for grabs. So there are lots of positives I gained by being here, and my perspectives actually by gaining this perspective of New Zealand life and New Zealanders and growing up here and what it's so different, it gave me that broader perspective about okay, what is India like? What is the world like? It gave me that sort of um, visibility at least while growing
So
up.
culturally, AJ, how different are how different do people think from a New Zealand culture perspective versus Indian culture? Like, do you think there are stark differences in these ideologies?
Massive. So the biggest thing I've noticed fundamentally is it's like in India, okay? If you're living in Bombay city versus you go to I'm giving you a very extremely exaggerated thing here,
Yeah.
just to make a point, right?
Yeah.
If you're staying in Bombay city and then suddenly you take a trip to a village in Haryana, that is the shift. That is the difference. Because the reality is that if you look at a country like India or USA with thriving economies and this and that, right? There is, and medical and everything, there is so much exposure to everything in these countries that actually they have evolved so dramatically far past a country like New Zealand in every way.
Wow.
When you think about technology and where technology is at in India versus and USA versus New Zealand, far ahead. When you think about mindset, far ahead. When you think about, a lot of aspects of life, I would say India and USA and stuff and bigger cities in general are just much further ahead. They'll blow them past. But people in New Zealand have learned how to enjoy life.
That's the tricky bit. Yeah.
And that's the two things. So there's two problems with, there's two problems with having a lot of free time and a lot of family time and stuff. One is mental illness goes through the roof because everyone's just in their heads.
Yeah.
That's also there. But people have learned to enjoy family time. People have learned to balance work life. People have learned to do things just for the fun of it, not just because it's a business.
I think that's that's very hard to learn, but
I'm still struggling till today, right? Because I still have that Indian blood in me to everything has to be a business and efficient and this and that.
Yeah, that is something. So I actually heard this from a friend, someone's cousin who was in the US, and this is what they were talking about as well. Like Indian and mostly like Asian countries and people who are now living in the US and are from these ethnicities, their expectations from their kids versus the expectation of probably someone from Europe from their kid academically, and in that regard are very different. And the European people are just not used to this culture of competitiveness and always thriving for the best, and they're like, they earn for 2 weeks and they spend it for the rest of the 2 weeks. So I think that culture is very new for us Indians to also understand, because we come from a place of so much competitiveness, so much always eagerness to stand out or just make your place in life.
Correct. And I'll tell you one more thing about that is actually when you look at the cost of living overseas, people might say that cost of living is high in New Zealand. I've heard that term thrown around and stuff. But now that my wife has come from India, she has pointed out very, very clearly and very well that actually for a single person to be coming out of college, moving to a major city and earning and supporting himself is a very difficult thing in India. So because of that, I see a lot of people trying different avenues like startups and this and that. And because they're exposed to a culture which is full of celebrities and pop culture and sports stars, and these things are a big deal in a place like India, people have actually grown up with such high aims and hopes and ambitions, which is a great thing. Whereas over in New Zealand, everything is relaxed. Like, it's a good thing. Like, for me personally, it's not a good thing. But for a lot of people, to actually have a lifestyle like New Zealand is a big win.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fundamental choice. Like, some people don't want that, 50-story building and a penthouse on the roof. Some people are happy with their villa on the farm.
Exactly. And the competitive nature and all this stuff, right? It does good things for you, but it can set you off on the wrong foot. It can become all about the competition more than the actual journey.
That's for sure true. And I think that kind of, wraps up all of our conversation, right? And it has taken so many turns, and I was so interested throughout the conversation, thinking out where are we going from each step to each step, and we covered your whole experience. What are some, before you go, tell us some 2-3 things that, you wish now you would have done differently if you were to start all over again, if there
Great
are any.
question. Yeah, great question. No. So, like I said before, no regrets.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But I always say to myself, if I wish I could have all this knowledge and go through school again. Because there is actually fundamentally so many things I would do differently. Number one is just respect. I mean, be grateful for people and be grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I think half my life was spent feeling like I'm entitled to something. Now I realize no matter who I am, whether tomorrow my name is really famous or whether I'm a nobody in other people's eyes, still I'm not entitled to anything. Everybody's a human being.
Yeah.
That fundamentally would have changed the way I interacted and approached so many things.
Yeah.
If I can get very specific, I would have probably taken risks sooner in life. I would have jumped into doing something that my heart, because I knew in my heart deep down, everybody knows what they should go towards. I think Guru Pashupati on your podcast spoke about dharma and all this stuff as well, right? So same thing, like everybody deep down knows what they want to do. The question is, are you brave enough to go after it? Are you brave enough to take that step? Because when I was young, for example, I used to watch Sachin Tendulkar play cricket and I wanted to be a cricketer.
Yeah.
And when I came to New Zealand, I actually got the opportunity to try. I didn't make it. but I managed to get to the national under 19 team and, I got somewhere.
That's impressive. Yeah, of course.
So the question is an individual willing to take that step? That's what I would have done. When I was younger, I was not brave enough. So
very solid couple of pieces of advice, I think, for everyone listening. But thanks, AJ, for coming on the podcast, man. I think it's super insightful to sit and talk to someone who's doing something very different from the norm. And thanks for your honesty, for sharing, things that you shared, which I feel again comes from a place of, being confident and secure enough to be vulnerable to accept your shortcomings. I think that is something which takes a lot of personal development first. So thanks for sharing so candidly, and I love talking to you.
No, thank you, man, and really appreciated you having me on the show. And the line of questions have kept me very engaged. And one of my goals is to start a podcast just like yourself to help the listeners gain something from journeys of people that have are on the journey or further in the journey. So thank you for this opportunity, and really your questions have given me goosebumps throughout. So yeah.
I am just a silly 23-year-old. I would love to know whenever you start your own podcast. I think the most serious podcast fan base would always, however little it is, it would always love to tune into your episodes.
It's great, man. It's great.
Thank you so much.